Hi everyone. I haven't done a video in a while, and quite frankly, every time I sit to do one, I find it really tricky. I think in many ways, the idea of doing videos reminds me of a time where I was very, very sick, and where all I could do was kind of turn on this camera and bear witness to kind of the suffering that I was going through and try to explain the depth of the despair that I'd gone through in so many years trying to get a diagnosis and to try to get my health in order. So even sitting here today, I get really anxious doing this, and maybe on some level I feel like now I have to do a better job, or just sitting down and turning on the camera is not enough, and I need to kind of know what I'm saying, and I can't just talk into the camera without planning, and you know, mine's a tricky place sometimes. But here I am, episode 65. It's the end of June 2016, and I recently wrapped up filming a Lyme documentary in French that will be airing on a TV channel called Canal V at the beginning of the fall, and we're also hoping to distribute the film in other ways as well. Those aren't yet clear, and also have the film translated as well. All these things should be kind of arranged in the months to come. Right now, it's the editing process that I'm not really part of. I was there more to do kind of play this character in the film that had Lyme disease for so long, and got better and is now on this quest to find answers. We interviewed a lot of patients. We interviewed doctors. We interviewed doctors both from the system side, so kind of the vast majority of what doctors might be saying, kind of the tape that they play, and then the doctors who've actually spent time thinking about Lyme disease, trying to connect with their patients, understand what they're going through, and who have understood that it's a much, much more complex illness than what the official system will admit to. There are problems with diagnosis, there are problems with treatment, and there are problems within pretty much every single area of Lyme disease. Doing the film was quite tricky for me. I traveled. We started filming in January. We did a few interviews then. I had never really done an interview in my life, like interviewing people. But I was up for the challenge, and even though my physical health wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, I retained this, superhuman ability to like get the energy and to do stuff. It's something that I've perfected over the last 15 years. Um, then I was lucky enough to go for a month to Asia, where I was able to travel, and my health was like, it was really encouraging how I was feeling. I was recuperating really well. Um, I wasn't in so much pain as I thought I might be. It was really, really great. Obviously, I think being on vacation helps. I got away from these responsibilities that I had. I was able to put the Lyme stuff away for just a little bit. Um, because of course it's tricky, it's a lot, it's heavy. A year ago I would have never ever been able to dream of doing what I was able to accomplish in the last 6 months. So it took a lot of work on myself, to be able to kind of get right in the heart of this issue that's so personal to me and that's been so devastating in my life, and that I still have a lot of um, I live with the consequences of all of this, of not being diagnosed, the kind of post-traumatic stress that brought on by my experiences of going to doctors and not getting help, and the sheer terror of being so ill and not having any place to turn to, or not have any answers. So it's been tricky. I worked hard at it. As I mentioned, I was able to travel, and upon coming back to Montreal at the end of March, I thought, after I travel, I'm going to kind of get all this energy, boost myself up and I'll be ready to kind of get into it and continue with the filming. And the bulk of what we were going to do was after March. Unfortunately, as I returned from my trip, I just started being sick right away. At first, I had this 2 week flu sort of thing, ear problem, I'm not sure what. Developed a fever, which was pretty cool. I was excited about that. I haven't really had fever in about 10 years, given the Lyme disease, I think. So I was happy about that. And I tried to stay, positive and say, well, it's okay that I'm sick. Everybody gets sick. I can do this. It's no problem. But I never really recuperated. I got better after 2 weeks, and then 2 days later, my digestion started just going completely off balance. It's never been good. I was still working on it, taking all these supplements, trying to help myself, but it just got bad. Started feeling this feeling that I hadn't had in maybe a few years, like this knife that's going through kind of my intestinal stomach region, going out the back. And this just feels like it just puts me completely off balance. I feel like I say dislodged in a way, like this is this central point, and everything around it moves into my entire body. The repercussions of it. Been struggling with really, really, really terrible migraines, nausea that's just been through the roof, um, and some body pain, especially after long days of filming and things like that. So it was very tricky. I was able to get through it. As I said, I'm very resilient, and like I had a mission, and my mission was to do the best job possible for this film, and so that's what I did. And so I was able to function on those days. So I'm very grateful for that. 2 years ago, I could not have even considered trying to function. I was so sick that, um, the idea that when I was so sick, I remember lying on the couch or in bed and thinking, if my apartment was to catch fire or if there was a fire in the building, I literally would not be able to get out. This is a reality that people that get very sick actually deal with, and you can imagine it's very scary, um, and it makes you feel so incredibly vulnerable. So, you know, don't get me wrong, my health is not terrible in that I can push myself to make things happen. But in between days where we filmed, and I had a lot of off days, I kind of like spent so many days just sitting and like almost in this like trauma state of like I worked, pushed myself too hard the day before, and then I just would sit there recuperating. And it was a lot of it was physical, but I mean, of course, there's the mental component where I was pushing myself to do these things and feeling like I was carrying a lot of this on my shoulders. In May, along with the director, we went to the Lyme disease conference that happened in Ottawa. It, there was a public forum where patients got to speak, and then the next 2 days, there were scientific presentations followed by discussions. It was a very, very interesting event to attend. I'm very happy that it happened. Of course, it was really, really tricky for me because I was wearing many, many hats. Not only was I there doing film, well, I wasn't filming, but with the director filming for the film, so we were doing interviews, but I got about 10 requests for interviews for different small radio stations, for the Montreal Gazette article that appeared a few days later, or maybe weeks. I was there to connect with other patients. I was there as a patient. You know, all over the place. There were moments in the middle of the day where I was like, okay, I just need to freak the fuck out right now for a second, and then catch myself back and continue doing all this stuff that I'm doing. But it was really, really intense. Um, really happy with the outcome of it, or at least with the conclusion of it. Maybe not the outcome. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. It could really go any way possible. It could be a complete disappointment. Um, but the conclusions were that, amongst others, patients needed to be involved in every process. moving forward for Lyme disease recognition and how to better surveil, diagnose, treat not only patients, but patients and the people who have been helping them get well. So we're not just talking about, whatever person who will come and say, I believe this, but we're talking about doctors who have actually treated outside of this official flawed protocol, or naturopaths that have done it, or researchers, PhDs that have been kind of tuned into this problem with Lyme disease and not just with their head in the sand. So, um, yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience. It's hard to explain in just one moment. In a few minutes, I gave a speech myself. I had 5 minutes to speak. It was hard to speak. I was very emotional, but I did it, and I was there to represent Quebec patients as well. Many of them weren't able to make it. People are too sick to go. People don't have the means to go. Lyme disease is it's something that I've now known. I was diagnosed over 2 years ago. I've been kind of in it and awake, let's say, for almost a year and a half. And by awake, I mean not extremely ill and unable to focus or read or do any of that. I've been able to create some distance between me and the issue, and just how tricky and awful and devastating and terrible and widespread and it is, and how everybody shares like such a similar story of just being abandoned and by the system, or sometimes by their families or by their friends. And it's just the depth of human suffering is it's hard to kind of face on a daily basis in that way, while remaining sane and not taking it to heart. And I'm a sensitive person. It's probably a major understatement. I'm very kind of sensitive and empathic, and it's hard not to get affected by all these things. I'm not that great at not getting affected by any of it. I work at it, but it's not always easy. So I've been struggling a lot in the last few months with depression. Actually, it's been a mix of things where, I've been pushing my body too hard and maybe my mind as well. So on moments where I'm not pushing it, there's kind of this like drop in like this depressive state of just like my body doesn't want to move, my mind doesn't want to think. I just like this almost voluntary numbness for protection. I've also been disappointed at how many symptoms have popped up for me, and that's been tricky as well. And what else? Yeah, I just think it's all part of the healing. I think um, I recently realized. I tend to be a little hard on myself. It was easier when I was very sick, actually, and I realized these patterns kind of coming back up. For one, like doing these videos, all of a sudden I put pressure on myself. Well, it's the same thing now. I feel like, well, I've gotten better, and I'm able to do these things, right? I'm able to go film, and I'm able to do all this stuff. So I should be dot dot dot. Whatever should. And a lot of those expectations have created kind of an unhealthy mental attitude. And yeah, I don't mean to say that I've been, severely depressed or anything like that, but it's just it's been tricky. I haven't, for example, done as many social activities as I want to be, been in contact with people. I've been kind of more isolating myself, and being hard on myself in many ways, but I recently realized a few days ago, I thought, okay, well, I don't know anybody who's done what I've done. In many ways, that's most of our lives are like that, right? Like we don't know anybody who's been through what we've been through. And yet I have this idea of how I'm supposed to be doing, and that I should be in more balance or better shape now, or feeling better. And in fact, there's really no written rules for it at all. And I think how I'm doing is the perfect way to be doing, with that side of depression, and with a little side of anxiety, and with the side of being too tired, and with the side of migraine. This is my journey. This is the story. And I've been, I don't know that I've ever been in any sort of balance in my life, or in the last 15 years, I haven't been healthy. As a kid and as a teenager, I was actually quite healthy, ridiculously so in many ways. And except for things like the scoliosis that I have, um, I did never really had many health problems, and I had energy, and I could, just pick up and run for 2 hours, as I did one time when I was 17. I wasn't a runner, and I just ran for 2 hours with somebody who had been training, and it's just stuff that I could do. And but in the last 15 years, I'd kind of lost all of that, and so um, it's almost like I want to be in this state of health and get to this point, but I don't even know what this point is. I've never really touched it as an adult person. I've never really been healthy. Um, and so I'm learning to give myself just time and space to figure this stuff out. I don't have anything to go back to. I need to build anything that I do moving forward. I need to build and kind of invent and create. And it's scary. It's really, really, really scary. And I think that fear has been a major paralyzing factor. And it's also been kind of moving towards, feeling anxious or feeling depressed as well. And yet, on the other hand, I feel like I've accomplished so much, and I'm so proud of what I've accomplished, and I recognize it for what it is. That I feel like I should just feel great about myself, and um, again with the should. So, I guess I'll be working at removing shoulds from my life as much, and just continue doing what I'm doing, taking a step back a bit from Lyme disease, or trying to. It's hard for me because I've just been in it so much. It's like it's what I do. It's what I know how to do. I guess I'm like a Lymeaholic or something in that way. But that isn't the most positive thing for me as well. Not that I want to cut myself from it completely. And just yesterday I was doing an interview for a written piece. So I'm not away from it, and I'm going to continue with the activism. But I need to figure out what I am and who I am outside of all of that. And tricky, tricky business for sure. I think this is probably going to be the longest video I've ever done here, so I think it's time for me to stop, and maybe it's a sign that I need to be doing these a little bit more often. And I do want to address one thing. Do I think that all my symptoms are from Lyme disease? And the answer to that is I don't know. I'm operating under the assumption that these symptoms aren't necessarily from Lyme disease, and that it's not that it's coming back. I can't promise that I'm right. I don't know that. I did get tested using bioresonance recently, and it came back negative. I'm looking to do another IGNX test to see how it differs from the IGNX I did 2 years ago, to see at which point I was in a state of an active infection. And now I'd like to see if it's not an active infection. But I don't know, and that's the tricky thing with Lyme disease. I'm certain that many people would say, well, you have Lyme disease, you've had it for so long, it's become chronic for sure, so it's coming back. And that is a distinct possibility, but one that I don't feel is what is going on. But I'm also really trying not to be in denial of it. So I've actually, over the last few weeks, have gone through those motions of thinking that this is probably the reason why I'm sick, the Lyme kind of coming back, becoming active again. And so I'm trying not to close myself off to it, because the last thing I want to do is be in denial, right? Or pretend that it's not happening when it is happening, or not take the appropriate steps to get better. But in any case, I'm not looking to bug kill right now. Whatever it is that is happening, which I know I have a big fungus problem, so that could explain a lot of the stuff. But whatever is happening, I just get the strong sense that what I need to do is work on my whole health and get myself stronger, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff, so that I'm less affected and also less likely to get sick from a whole bunch of other things. Because I mean, even in the last 6 months, I had to get treated for parasites twice because I was picking them up, and so um, I'm clearly still, struggling with this like immunity and with fighting off these bugs. Not even Lyme and co-infections necessarily, but all sorts of bugs all around us, right? And all sorts of stressors that we have on our health. So rebuild, rebuild, rebuild is what I'm trying to do. Um, and I'm not even focusing right now, at least, on a physical approach to it. I'm really trying to look at it from a really much bigger and holistic perspective. So hopefully that's going to be paying off for me in the short, medium, and long term.